Many research groups, including our own, have shown that when hydrogen gas is removed from alkaline ionized water, the therapeutic benefits are eliminated. So we know conclusively, without a shadow of a doubt, that hydrogen gas is the therapeutic agent.
Now, hydrogen doesn't last in the water forever. So what about all of this like pH water that people are selling at the grocery store?
That becomes largely a scam.
Wow.
Joining us today is Dr. Tyler LeBaron, scientist, educator, and founder of the Molecular Hydrogen Institute, bringing groundbreaking insights on the power of molecular hydrogen for human health.
When you drink hydrogen water, you can see changes in your breath, hydrogen exhalation within 2 minutes.
I have seen in the functional medicine space that they do intravenous infusions of hydrogen peroxide. Are you familiar of why they're doing that?
Hydrogen peroxide as a strong oxidant, probably most people are thinking, okay, you put that in there, it's going to kill all the bacteria. Instead, it causes a systemic reaction of the body's immune system, and it upregulates your immune system.
There's biohackers out there that do challenges, which is a 7-day water fast. What's your input on that?
There's no amazing evidence that a 7-day fast is going to totally induce major stem cell production and transform your health and all this stuff, but the clinical studies are lacking with that.
How can first responders like a firefighter benefit from molecular hydrogen?
First off,
welcome to another episode of A Healthy Point of View podcast. I'm your host, Sam Tejada. And like usual, we're bringing experts from all over the world to talk about health, wellness, beauty, and mindset. Today, we have a guest. We're going to be talking about molecular hydrogen. A lot of you guys are hearing all these people talking about, oh, hydrogen tablets. You know, they're snorting and sniffing hydrogen through the nasal cannula. People have the hydrogen water bottles. And there's a lot of questions about that because you could go online, get a hydrogen water bottle for like $20. And then there's other ones that are a heck of a lot more expensive. And I think there's a reason why they're more expensive. But today we're bringing the expert. This is an expert who's not just selling products out there and stuff. He is behind the Molecular Hydrogen Institute. He is a PhD, he's an educator, a researcher, one of the top gurus globally when it comes to molecular hydrogen. Today we have Dr. Tyler LeBaron. What's up, brother?
hey,
Pleasure to have you here. All right. Nice little welcome from the Liquid Vita team here at A Healthy Point of View.
oh, amazing. Well, thank you. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, man, the guru behind hydrogen. And I know this not just because I read it on the website or something like that. That's how I was introduced to you by a few people that I highly respect in the functional medicine space, right? And one of them was Dr. Christopher Davis, who's my business partner, interventional cardiologist, one of the smartest doctors I know. And where I actually met you is when he brought it up to me. We were at one of the Maha events, one of the Make America Healthy Again galas, and someone it was Anthony Lally. He's like, "Hey, you have to meet this guy. You know, you might want to bring him on your podcast." And I looked at Dr. Davis. I says, "Who is this guy?" He says, "No, he's the guy." And when Dr. Davis says he's the guy, you're the guy. So, how did you get into this whole molecular hydrogen? Like, I want to know, like, from when you were young, how what was going through your mind where you says, you know what, I'm going to go and study this.
Yeah, well, thank you. It is my pleasure to be here and talk about something I have been passionate about and researching for a long time since 2009, so over 16 years now.
Wow.
And, I guess from a young age, I've always been interested in health and longevity and wellness. Even elementary school, learning that sugar is probably not the best thing for you. I'm like, okay, well, I'll stop doing that. I've always been interested in pushing myself, exercising, and just studying and learning about how the body works. And then in 2009, I came across alkaline ionized water. And
Mm,
later, as we'll talk about, discovered the real benefit is molecular hydrogen. And even went to Japan and did research over there and been doing that ever since.
wow. Wow. And that's going to be an interesting conversation talking about the the alkaline water and what the benefits are from that. And so Japan. So there's a very soft spot in my heart for Japan because I studied Japanese for 3 years. I've
Oh,
been to Japan. I love
日本語わかりますか？
Ohayo gozaimasu. Oname wa. Samael-san. Yeah. So I know a little bit,
So this,
nothing too crazy, like, when I went to Japan, I thought I was gonna be able to communicate a little bit better, and, oh, man, it's nothing like what when you're learning it in grade school, it's a
Mhm.
lot quicker and, it's different. So, um, Japan. So, one thing I know about Japan is they do a lot of research on clinical stuff, especially, like, clinical devices, and I participated in some of the research in one of my initial clinics that I had, doing mercury testing with some technologies they have. Why Japan?
Well, that is where the research started. And so in 2007, there was an article published and in Nature Medicine, and that was done in Japan. And I'll talk about that a little bit article, but Japan was it's interesting because that's even where the alkaline ionized water industry mainly started. And back in the 1960s, it was approved for the human consumption. But I ended up going to Japan in 2013 to do research at Nagoya University for an internship because I wanted to research molecular hydrogen, and that's where all the research was coming from was from Japan,
Wow.
and I mean there were a few places like here in the states and around the world, but Japan really was the epicenter of the top premier research.
Are the people in Japan, and you might know the answer to this, are they actively utilizing hydrogen on a day-to-day basis?
A lot of people are. So there was a survey that was done actually before COVID, and about 50% of the Tokyo population was in some way, form, or the other using molecular hydrogen.
Okay. So when you decided to go get your PhD, where did you go to school? What did you go to school initially for?
Well, my background's in biochemistry, my undergrad, and then I did a master's in exercise and sports conditioning, and then my PhD was in physiology. And
Okay.
so I've really been researching molecular hydrogen since literally I started my undergrad in biochemistry.
And do you have actual published research under you?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I've been very fortunate with is I've published now over 50 publications on molecular hydrogen. Actually just the other day I got an email from Scholar GPS and I was rated as one of the top 0.5% scholars in academia in these fields like oxidative stress and so on. So
Amazing,
yeah, I've
man.
been really active in publications and really doing the research and working with a lot of colleagues and I think it's exciting for me because I've been at this for a long time, and when I first started educating about molecular hydrogen back in, well, I said 2009, but I started the Molecular Hydrogen Institute back in 2013, just as a website. It wasn't a nonprofit then. But back then, nobody really had a lot of interest about molecular hydrogen, and nobody knew about it. And
Right.
now it's all over the place.
What brought that attention to hydrogen?
Well, I think a couple things that the research, number one, because the research, the clinical studies that we'll get into, I think has really shown that hydrogen is not just a fad, and it helps to differentiate that it's not the same as alkaline water. There's a lot of misconceptions about that.
Right.
And just the awareness, like in Japan, it's already very popular, and so that's making its way here into North America. And you have important, influencers, so to speak, and educators like yourself, helping people to learn about molecular hydrogen. And I've been educating about this for a really, really long time. So to me, it's really exciting to see now the industry starting to really emerge, and a lot of people are showing interest in molecular hydrogen, essentially using much of the research and publications that I've done to build this industry. Now, I'm not, of course, the first one in this, but I was one of the early pioneers, and so I have connections and collaborations with the top researchers all over the world,
Right.
and that I have published papers with. So for me, it's really exciting.
Yeah, the other thing about you, man, you're like a specimen, man. You're physically fit. You're in good shape. You kind of look like one of those guys that like bend pieces of metal like if it's rubber. You're pretty jacked. So I know you're really in tune to your health and your body and everything else. Um, I would only assume that you probably have done a lot of stuff when it comes to hydrogen with people that are physically fit and people that are performing at a very high level, like athletes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of my first publications was actually looking at the effects of molecular hydrogen in for exercise performance. And there's now probably 20 plus clinical studies on hydrogen for exercise specifically and even a meta-analysis. So a meta-analysis is the highest tier of evidence, well, one of the highest tiers of evidence. And when you look at those studies, you see that hydrogen is able to help reduce fatigue, for example, help to improve exercise performance. There's so many different metrics that you're looking at. Um, but I kind of think maybe just for the audience, maybe if we go back to the basics, just a little bit about when we're talking about molecular hydrogen, because I don't want that to be a confusion or
Right.
conflation between pH, for example, because people hear hydrogen water and they think pH, like potential hydrogen, and somehow that gets conflated to
Yeah, like
hydrogen.
the first aid hydrogen peroxide you're
Yeah, or
talking
something,
about.
or hydrogen peroxide,
Yeah.
right? And what's the difference between that? So just to clarify, when we're talking about molecular hydrogen, we're talking about the gas that's used as an
Right.
alternative energy source. And so you have the hydrogen is the number one on the periodic table of elements, and that hydrogen atom will combine with another hydrogen atom to form the H2 molecule or a hydrogen gas. And that gas is simply dissolved in the water. And it
Right.
doesn't stay in the water forever. It doesn't attach to the water or change the molecular structure. It's just a gas dissolved in the water, just like other gases can dissolve in the water. And so eventually that gas comes out. It's not instantaneous, but it's in the water, or you can take the gas and you can inhale it. And so it's another route of administration. So it has nothing to do with alkaline water, which is an important clarification. However, going to what we talked about earlier, with alkaline ionized water, when you make that water, or called electrolyzed reduced water, you'd use the process of electrolysis. And electrolysis, by definition, is the decomposition of water into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. So you make hydrogen gas while you're making the alkaline ionized water. And some of that hydrogen gas gets dissolved in that alkaline ionized water. So when you drink that alkaline ionized water, you sometimes get some hydrogen gas. And that hydrogen gas is what has been shown to be therapeutic. And this is a crazy story because nobody knew that the hydrogen gas was the exclusive agent responsible for the therapeutic benefits of alkaline ionized water until really quite recently. Because
Interesting.
all these machines came out back in the 1990s, super popular.
And some of these machines, and I'm fine throwing names out there. There's one that it's Kagan,
Yeah,
Kagan.
Kangen, from Monagic.
Is that
Mhm.
one of those pH
Yeah,
creating
yeah,
water?
exactly. It makes high
Yeah.
pH alkaline ionized water, right?
Okay.
And it just with it has electrodes, an anode and a cathode, and the water goes through there, separates basically the two streams, and you have alkaline water and acidic water. But it does it through electrolysis. But that alkaline water, you can see it contains hydrogen gas. Like it has these bubbles. Like you can even take like a lighter and hold it underneath the faucet, where the water's coming out, and you'll hear crackling sounds. That's because
Oh,
hydrogen gas was being produced,
wow.
and that's hydrogen gas. But see, that gas was not dissolved in the water. That's why it's igniting, right? If you see gaseous bubbles, that gas is just going to escape into the atmosphere. It's not going to provide any therapeutic effect. You
Right.
want to have the gas fully dissolved into the water, and then when you drink that, that's when you get therapeutic effects. And the people who are familiar with alkaline ionized water, they realize that this water is not stable, that if you store it for too long, if you shake it or something, then the therapeutic benefits are eliminated. And nobody knew why that was. They thought it was something, it's like the water structure was somehow magically changed and it's just not very stable, or they thought it was some other properties. But it turns out it's just because hydrogen is a gas and it goes out of the water if you're
Oh,
shaking it
yeah.
around.
So, Doc, hold on one second. It's and this is for the listeners and viewers of the podcast right now. So, you already described that the gas can escape the water. No different than like the carbonation in
Yeah,
soda, right?
100%.
Soda eventually you leave it open or something,
Goes
it becomes
flat.
flat. Um, so if people are getting the benefit of this alkaline water from the hydrogen doesn't last in the water forever. So what about all of this like pH water that people are selling at the grocery store?
That becomes the question. That becomes largely a scam.
Wow.
And we know this so well because first off, if it's just alkaline water because the pH was elevated, it won't provide any therapeutic benefits because even if we subscribe to the idea that we need to alkalize our bodies or something, you cannot do that with alkaline water. A teaspoon of baking soda will neutralize as much acid as thousands of liters of alkaline water at a pH of 10 because alkaline water is not a buffer. And that's why you can take alkaline water and just drop a pinch of lemon juice and it goes acidic.
Oh,
And a lot of these early studies on alkaline ionized water, like cell culture studies, let's say, that cell culture the media has to be a specific pH. So before they added the water, they would neutralize the the pH of the water, but yet it would still have therapeutic effects.
mm,
Well, obviously wasn't from the alkaline property. it was something else. What was that something else? It's the hydrogen gas. But as soon as that hydrogen gas is removed from the water, all the benefits are eliminated.
Wow.
So alkaline water there are several reasons that alkaline water can have benefits, but it depends on why it is alkaline. So let's go through them just briefly, just for the audience, okay? Number one, if it's alkaline because it went through a process of electrolysis and hydrogen gas was made, and the hydrogen gas is still in the water by the time you drink it, then that water can have benefits, not because of the water itself, but because it contains dissolved hydrogen gas.
Mm,
All
okay.
right. Another one, sometimes if you add minerals to water, like let's say calcium, magnesium, and other things, so a lot of times these minerals are like magnesium carbonates or bicarbonates, and that is the conjugate base, and it's going to raise the pH a little bit. So
Okay.
often, mineral water is also alkaline.
Mm,
So if you drink this water, a lot of studies have shown that especially if you're deficient or something, that drinking water containing extra minerals like magnesium, calcium, I'm not talking about excessive levels, not like super
right.
high levels, right? But just good normal levels that has benefits. It's beneficial to drink water that has minerals in it.
Right. Right.
So therefore, if you drink water that's alkaline, that has minerals, that's good for you. Again, not because it's alkaline, but because of the minerals, right?
Right.
Now, if it's only alkaline because you just added like potassium hydroxide or sodium hydroxide, lie a little bit of that, it's not going to provide you any of these therapeutic benefits.
Wow.
Now, our conversation is specifically focused on molecular hydrogen, and we published several articles, but one in particular, it's a comprehensive review article where we show throughout all the literature that many research groups, including our own, have shown that when the hydrogen gas is removed from alkaline ionized water, the therapeutic benefits are eliminated.
Right.
So we know conclusively, without a shadow of a doubt, that hydrogen gas is the therapeutic agent. And now that we know that, then other products can be developed that focus exclusively on increasing the therapeutic levels of molecular hydrogen in the water.
Where people can get even a greater benefit versus what they've been experienced from the pH water.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And of course, there can be therapeutic effects from the alkaline ionized water if that hydrogen gas is present. But that's the issue is sometimes that concentration is not high enough because the people are not maintaining their machines, like they don't clean them with citric acid and different things. The hydrogen gas does not stay dissolved into the water.
Oh wow. So Doc, what is when we're talking about molecular hydrogen versus just hydrogen, or people use the word just hydrogen water?
Mhm.
What is molecular?
Yeah, so the word molecular has the reference to a molecule itself. So if we think about the water molecule, you have oxygen and you have hydrogen, right? So it kind of looks like Mickey Mouse.
Right.
That is a molecule. And as I talked about earlier, hydrogen is number one on the periodic table of elements, and the hydrogen atom alone has an unpaired electron, so it's not going to be stable. It's always going to react with something else very quickly, and it can react with a whole bunch of other atoms or elements. So if it reacts with oxygen, it can form things like water, H2O. There's two hydrogens and oxygen. It could react with carbon to form hydrocarbons,
Mm,
right? That's going to be your glucose, carbohydrates, your fuel, right? Gasoline, right? Hydrocarbons, all of these things. It can also react with, say, nitrogen, and that's going to give you things like amino acids or ammonia,
mm,
right? Hydrogen can pretty much react with anything, and it's going to form new compounds.
right.
Okay,
Right.
um, if it reacts with itself, if a hydrogen atom and a hydrogen atom react with itself, then it forms a hydrogen molecule. So that's the molecular aspect. It's a hydrogen molecule or molecular hydrogen.
Okay.
And that's why our institute is Molecular Hydrogen Institute because our focus is on molecular hydrogen.
Right.
So the molecular just means that molecular level on that small level where you have atoms that are bound together in covalent bonds.
Interesting. Interesting. I love it. So when we talk about hydrogen peroxide,
Ah, yeah.
right? Hydrogen peroxide, because a lot of people when they think hydrogen,
Mhm.
especially the layperson, they think, oh, well, hydrogen peroxide. I use it as my mouthwash. I use it for first aid. Number one, don't drink it. Anyone who's listening, don't go out there and just start drinking your hydrogen peroxide. Let
Yeah.
Dr. LeBaron here explain the difference of what is hydrogen peroxide versus molecular hydrogen of what we're talking
Yeah, so hydrogen peroxide is totally different chemical species.
about. Right.
So if we think about water again, as I said, the chemical structure, as we know, is H2O. So HOH, right? That's the water molecule. Hydrogen peroxide is H2O2.
Hmm.
So there are two oxygens. So that chemical structure is HOOH.
Mm.
Right.
Right.
So that's hydrogen peroxide. There's additional oxygen that's attached to it. And what happens if you think about how that looks like in your head, HOOH. What happens that bond between the two oxygen gets separated and now you have just OH and OH. That's the hydroxyl radicals. And these will destroy or kill and activate any pathogen that there is. So
Right.
it's really good for cleaning. It's a very strong oxidizer, so it's going to bleach things, like a whitening agent or things like that also.
Right.
So it's a very powerful oxidizing agent because it that bond is readily broken. Whereas we're talking about like with hydrogen water, we just have normal water, H2O. It's always that, just HOH. We don't change the water structure at all. We just dissolve hydrogen gas. That H2 molecule gets dissolved into the water.
So you said it makes things a cleaning agent makes it whiter. That just kind of came to mind of like Billy Mays. Make your brights brighters, whites whiters, OxyClean, right?
Yeah.
Is that what's inside of OxyClean?
Well, I don't know. I remember those commercials, but yeah, I don't. It's probably not hydrogen peroxide though.
We'd have to take a
Yeah,
look at it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it could be either a strong oxidant that will do it, or something very alkaline. That could do it.
Right. Right.
But hydrogen peroxide is a strong oxidizer, so it will literally break apart what's called the chromophores that make up color. And so if
Right.
it breaks those apart, then it's gonna lead it bleaching agent
Okay.
basically.
Now with the hydrogen peroxide, I have seen in the functional medicine space that they do intravenous infusions of hydrogen peroxide. So when they're doing that, are you familiar of why they're doing that?
I've heard about it. I don't know that there's a lot of clinical data and things behind that. I'd be very cautious about it. But the idea behind it is that hydrogen peroxide, as a strong oxidant, right? Then probably most people are thinking, okay, you put that in there, it's going to kill all the bacteria and everything. But the hydrogen peroxide reacts very quickly. So it's not like going to go into the bloodstream and then not react with anything and then magically find this hidden parasite or something and
Right.
then only react with that. Instead, it's a very strong toxin, and it causes a systemic reaction of the body's immune system, and it upregulates your immune system,
Hmm.
and probably that is what can get different metabolic pathways or cellular pathways as immunomodulator activated, and that can then in turn have those effects. So if people were going to try to use these types of oxidative therapies, it's probably even a more important idea to use something like molecular hydrogen, which helps to balance out that strong oxidative effect with its unique selective antioxidant effects.
Interesting. The when it comes to molecular hydrogen, are you able to infuse any type of water with molecular hydrogen?
Of course.
So would you be able to technically put it in 0.9% sodium chloride into
Yeah,
like
exactly.
normal
Yeah, it's just
saline?
saline. Yeah, and there's studies where hydrogen-rich saline is used. We've done studies where we in animals, for example, with hydrogen-rich saline, and you can inject that.
Infuse it directly in,
Yes. Yeah.
and it doesn't there's not like a metabolic disturbance or like a osmolarity.
Not at all, because hydrogen gas is not an active osmolyte, so it doesn't alter the osmolarity of, because hydrogen gas is more considered what we call as a penetrating solute, right? So when you look at osmolarity, you have penetrating, non-penetrating solutes, and
Okay.
so it's more important to maintain the tonicity of a solution than it is the osmolarity of a solution. Well, actually, both are important. Sorry, so the other way around. The tonicity of the solution isn't really going to change because hydrogen gas is a penetrating solute, but
Mm,
it's a very small gas anyway, so it's really not even a matter of question at this point. But hydrogen gas is very natural to our bodies. When we are healthy, we eat a healthy diet, that we naturally produce hydrogen gas from our microbiome. So a healthy microbiome produces lots of hydrogen gas.
okay.
That's just a natural thing. And in fact, the healthier you are, the more hydrogen gas you tend to produce. This is the correlation. The Japanese centenarians, they tend to produce higher amounts of hydrogen gas than people who are younger and don't live to become centenarians,
Oh,
right?
wow.
You have other correlations like people with Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's and other problems. They also have less hydrogen producing bacteria than people who don't have those conditions. So a lot of important correlations about the amount of natural production of hydrogen gas. And when we eat a healthy diet with that contains fibers, we are going to produce more hydrogen gas. So
Right.
hydrogen gas is already something very natural to the bodies, and it's like I mentioned, it has selective antioxidant properties, which means it's not going to just radically induce a reductive stress or something. Very much the opposite than any conventional antioxidant. It's not like your typical glutathione or vitamin C or other
Yeah, I was
antioxidants.
gonna ask that. We always hear because we live in such a toxic world, right? So we're talking about eating foods that are high in antioxidants, a lot of different berries, but then you have the other antioxidants, vitamin E, glutathione, ascorbic acid. Vitamin C is an antioxidant. So how does that really differentiate between molecular hydrogen?
Yeah, in several critical ways. Number one, many of these antioxidants don't even get to the location that they need to in order to be effective
Okay.
because they're large and their pharmacokinetics, their dynamics are not able to get to the site of ROS or reactive oxygen species generation quick enough. So, for example, you take something like, let's say, vitamin C. So, vitamin C, in order that's number one, it's more water soluble, and so it's not going to really protect very much in the cell membrane area
Mm.
because it's water soluble. That's why fat and water don't mix,
Right.
right? So instead, you need to use a different antioxidant, like vitamin E. That's going to be in the cell membranes, but then vitamin E is not going to do a lot of protection in the plasma in the water soluble area. So hydrogen gas, however, it dissolves into the plasma. It has a higher solubility in the cell membranes, and so it's going to protect both areas.
Okay.
Okay, so there's one thing. And then if we think about how quickly hydrogen gas can diffuse into the tissues, when you drink hydrogen water, you can see changes in your breath hydrogen exhalation within 2 minutes.
Oh,
So it's
wow.
reaching your brain and other organs within 2 minutes, basically, because hydrogen gas is the smallest molecule. It's going to penetrate the intestines. It goes to the liver and it goes to the heart and then it gets pumped to the lungs. And you see the exhalation of hydrogen gas. So its distribution of how quickly it's getting to target tissues is very rapid.
Okay.
All right. Another point is once hydrogen gas gets to the cell membranes, it's able to penetrate the cell membranes very easily and reach subcellular compartments like the nucleus, the mitochondria, all these other areas. It can easily get through the cell membranes. Whereas other antioxidants like vitamin C will say it can't do that very readily because vitamin C, it cannot penetrate the cell membrane all by itself. Or, well, it can, but it has to go through a membrane transporter. There are specific transporters to bring that in because vitamin C is a larger molecule. It's charged at that pH, so it cannot get through the cell membrane. Whereas hydrogen gas can just zip right through. It can penetrate these membranes, including the inner mitochondrial membrane, very easily. There's no problem.
Right.
And if we also look at the size dynamics, so vitamin C weighs around 186 grams per mole. So if you have a mole of vitamin C, it'd be 186 grams. Whereas hydrogen gas, if you have the same amount, it's only going to weigh 2 grams. I
Mm.
mean,
Okay.
it's orders of magnitude lighter. So the things that dictate bioavailability are things like the size. The smaller it is, the easier it can get into the cells. Well, hydrogen gas beats everything on that case. Its charge, hydrogen gas it's non-ionic, so there's no charge to it. It's neutral. Whereas other things that are charged, like even a sodium ion or potassium ion, those are just one element, right? But they're charged. And
Right.
because they're charged, they have a hydration sphere around it. And because of that, they can't just enter the cell membrane. That's why you can have ion gradients because they can't just go through the cell membranes. And there's specific ion channel, like this potassium channel, a sodium channel, right? Everyone has its own specific channel. And but with molecular hydrogen, it can just diffuse right through the cell membrane or go through the channels.
Right.
And then also its polarity. Well, like water is a neutral molecule, but it's also polar. That's why it has that like Mickey Mouse shape. It's a polar molecule. So even water that cannot go through the cell membrane. That's why water and fat do not mix together because water is polar. So
Right.
water, for water to enter the cell membranes or into the cell, it has to go through protein channels like an aquaporin.
Mm.
Again, hydrogen gas doesn't have to do that. So on all of these points, hydrogen gas has higher bioavailability and higher diffusivity than anything else. It just rapidly penetrates following its concentration gradient and through Brownian motion.
Right. Right.
So the difference then is, okay, now we get to the cells. Well, then how is this different than, say, the antioxidant actions of vitamin E, vitamin C, glutathione, or something? And that's where things get really interesting and really sets things apart even more.
Let's talk about it.
First off, hydrogen gas is selective. In other words, it only can reduce or go after the most damaging or toxic free radicals. It
Can you overdose on hydrogen gas?
no,
No.
no. You just keep on dosing and get higher and higher, and then there's just a diminishing returns of the benefit.
Mm.
Hydrogen gas does not store in the tissues. So it's just a gas. You just exhale it out. After 30 to 60 minutes of drinking hydrogen water or of stopping inhalation of hydrogen gas, everything goes back down to baseline.
Okay.
So you cannot overdose on it. And
Wow.
you get to a certain level that once you surpass the therapeutic threshold, maybe there's some concentration and dose dependent effects, but eventually you just get diminishing returns. All right. So there's no concern about overdosing with molecular hydrogen. And like we talked about, if there were, then does that mean we should stop eating fiber and stop having a healthy diet because we're going to produce more hydrogen gas? Like that doesn't
Right.
make any sense.
It
And all the
doesn't.
studies show the opposite, that the more hydrogen gas you naturally produce, the healthier you are as well.
Right.
So, and this goes to the selectivity, because when it comes to antioxidants, it is a good question. Can you overdose with antioxidants? And the answer is absolutely. Categorically, you can. And we have seen this many times in many clinical studies and animal studies, and we have emerging mechanisms to explain why this is. But just to put this in perspective, you can see a number of clinical studies where they had to stop the study before even completing them because those taking high doses of these synthetic conventional antioxidants were dying and getting cancer faster than those on placebo.
Oh wow.
This is very well documented and very well known. And people can make the argument, oh, that was just synthetic or this or that. But the fact is, they were still reducing compounds. They were still antioxidants. They still exerted this antioxidant activity.
Right.
So there's a lot of variables going on. What we have to remember is the body is needs homeostasis. Okay. Just as oxidative stress, too much of that is harmful, you also do not want to have reductive stress. And aging and disease is associated not merely with oxidative stress, but also with reductive stress. It's actually a disequilibrium, it's a dishomeostasis, it's a redox dysregulation. That is the real root cause of all these conditions. And so, by just taking a bunch of antioxidants, maybe you're helping some areas of oxidative stress, but you are literally exacerbating the other areas of reductive stress, as well as converting many of these antioxidants into pro-oxidants that further exacerbates the oxidative stress that the pathology is already inducing.
So what is the secret sauce like dosage wise? Because I would think that some of these other antioxidants are still important in some sense, right?
100%.
So it's really the combination of both.
Yes, and well, and that's the thing with these other antioxidants, you don't want to get too high of a dose. And also, these antioxidants are not merely just radical scavenging passive antioxidants, but they have unique uh, biochemistry in themselves that have unique effects. They have signaling effects, and that also can create problems if they're too high. Now,
Mm,
I'm really trying to separate why hydrogen gas is not like these conventional antioxidants.
right.
This is why you cannot overdose with it. You cannot overdose with molecular hydrogen because hydrogen is not merely a radical scavenger. In fact,
Right.
if you put hydrogen gas in the same compartment as important free radicals like nitric oxide or superoxide or other ones, there'd be no reaction. Hydrogen gas does not have the reductive capacity or power to neutralize those free radicals. Unlike, say, vitamin C or vitamin E, that those would neutralize those oxidants. Hydrogen gas cannot do it. So
Okay.
there's no reaction. Furthermore, hydrogen gas, its key, its intelligence is because it activates your body's innate antioxidant systems. It
Mm,
activates what's known as the NRF2 pathway, and this is your body's own ability to produces natural antioxidants. This is the NRF2 is a transcription factor, the one that gets activated, regulates over 200 cytoprotective proteins and enzymes in the body. And that in turn, when it's activated, gives you that antioxidation, detoxification, these phase 2 enzymes that your body needs for overall protection. So hydrogen gas regulates all of this at the perfect homeostasis for your cells.
the NFR2, is there other things that help activate that
Oh,
as well?
100%. But see, this is also a differentiation. So you take something like sulforaphane or other molecules that can activate NRF2. That is wonderful. It's fantastic. But they're also powerful NRF2 activators and they're indiscriminate.
Right.
Because if you put this in cell cultures, you can see the high hyperactivation. Hyperactivation NRF2 is not good. And in fact, cancer cells and other pathologies can hyperactivate NRF2 and protect themselves and evade your immune system, evade cell death, and cause a whole bunch of cellular problems because it was hyperactivated, going back to the reductive stress. Hydrogen gas doesn't do that. In
Mm,
fact, we see many studies where in the disease condition, the NRF2 was pathologically upregulated, but in the hydrogen condition, NRF2 was downregulated,
okay.
closer to control levels. So hydrogen gas is not unidirectionally altering these pathways in only unidirectionally just one way. It's regulating things. It's helping the cells go back to homeostasis. So we see the protective effects of hydrogen gas by bringing these pathways or the activation of these enzymes back to homeostasis.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Autophagy is another good example of this. Obviously, autophagy can have a lot of benefits. This autophagic cell process that's clearing out the senescent cells and organelles that aren't working very well. This is really important. And as we're aging and with a lot of inflammation, we have less autophagy that's going on. And by fasting and other methods, we can increase autophagy. But if you have too much autophagy, then you suffer autophagic cell death. And that's obviously bad.
Those are the senescent cells.
Yeah, well, autophagy is the first attacks the senescent cells first.
Okay.
But you can start having too much autophagy where you're not only attacking those senescent cells, you're also killing healthy cells, normal cells. I mean,
Okay.
if you fast for too long,
Yeah,
y-
that's probably not a good
it's
idea.
not a good idea. Like you're literally going to destroy even the healthy cells because they don't have anything. Your body doesn't have the sustenance that it needs to maintain, right?
So that leads me to that you just triggered a question here. So there's something big, and a lot of people are doing it. And there's biohackers out there that do challenges for people to do this as well too, which is a 7-day water fast. What's your input on that?
I mean, if you do that, you will create too much autophagy in some areas,
Okay.
right? I think it's a good potentially mental challenge. That there's, I mean, I did a 5 day fast, a 5 day water fast. It was
Hold on, but was the water molecular hydrogen water
I
or
did
was it
use
regular?
molecular
Oh yeah.
hydrogen, and
Okay.
I would recommend that if people want to do this, they should probably use molecular hydrogen during that fast
Okay.
because molecular hydrogen can help to regulate autophagy. So it can help to induce autophagy in the cells where they should have autophagy, but it
Okay.
can actually suppress autophagy in the cells that don't need to undergo that.
Right.
So it's a regulator of all of this, and so yeah, I'd be careful. I mean, I'm just as a point of health or whatever. There's probably there's no amazing evidence that a 7 day fast is gonna like totally, induce like major stem cell production and transform your health and all this stuff. There's a lot of anecdotes and things out there, but the clinical studies are lacking with that.
Okay.
But if people want to do that, and there can be some benefits. I mean, even going more ketogenic and getting your body to adapt to the ketones, yeah, I think there's some great benefits there. But you do run the risk of uh, losing a lot of muscle, for example. So you just have to
Mm,
be wise about how you're doing it.
okay. That's good to know. So, obviously, we've talked a lot about what molecular hydrogen is and the difference between other type of waters that are out there and what it's doing inside of the body. I want to go into talking about some of the different people that you've seen benefit from molecular hydrogen. And I want to start off with like the athletes, people that are very active. is I'm starting to see a lot of that of people doing molecular hydrogen therapy um, for like the recovery, for the performance. And earlier you were talking about fatigue. Now this is a different fatigue than just like like adrenal fatigue or someone who's just fatigued because they have other type of issues within their body. I think you're meaning more of like fatigue while they're playing the sport and they're getting extra tired very quickly. Right. So what are some of the benefits that these professional athletes or they don't even have to be professional,
Mhm.
anyone who's, playing football or, any other kind of sport, what are the benefits from actual hydrogen water?
So this is there's a number of very important points that I want to make, but one of them I want to talk about the safety of hydrogen for sport athletes because it's not a banned substance. It's not, you're not going to get tested or whatever with this. It's something natural your body already produces from the gut microbiome.
So like water and wasabi, they don't test for anything like
Exactly. There's
hydrogen?
no way,
Okay.
like, what, so you ate some fiber, and so now you have naturally produced more hydrogen gas,
Right,
right?
right.
And it's completely safe, so it's not harming your system either. It's something that's natural, it's safe to your body. Now, when it comes to sport athletes, especially elite athletes, the one of the very important factors that one has to consider is this supplement going to hurt me? Is it going to impair my performance?
Right.
And this is a major problem with many athletes. They're trying to get that cutting edge, right? Just a little bit a competitive advantage. So they're open to trying a whole bunch of new things, and often they do that to their own detriment. And let's just talk about a couple of those and separate why this is so different from molecular hydrogen. So we talked about antioxidants and people taking extra antioxidants because if you're exercising a lot more, you are creating a lot more free radicals.
Right.
And therefore, you have more free radicals, then you're going to have slower recovery and on and on. So it makes logical sense. Take more free radicals. What does the data show? The data shows that by taking antioxidants, not only do you slow down recovery, but you blunt the exercise training adaptations. You actually impair mitochondrial biogenesis. So after say 8, 12 weeks of training and taking all the antioxidants, there are no increased in mitochondria that you otherwise would have had because these antioxidants were basically blunting that. You
Mm,
don't have the increase in in insulin sensitivity or GLUT4 translocation and a number of other biomarkers that you see from muscle biopsies that you would otherwise see or that occurs in the control group, but you don't see that when you're taking these high doses of antioxidants.
okay.
But people still take those all the time because they're trying to get that competitive advantage, and they're
Right.
thinking logically, "We should take this because mechanistically it makes sense." Same thing with inflammation. We know that high levels of inflammation are going to prevent you from recovering. That
Right.
chronic low grade inflammation is going to make it so you're not going to be able to activate your mTOR as well. Let's say you won't do as much protein synthesis. You're not growing your muscles and getting the strength gains. You really need to get rid of that inflammation for your body to fully recover and repair. So, what's the logical solution? Take anti-inflammatories.
Mm,
And what does the clinical evidence show? That impairs exercise performance, or it impairs exercise adaptations. So now people who are taking these anti-inflammatories, you don't get as strong of an anabolic signal for muscle growth and muscle
mm,
strength and recovery. It actually prolongs the recovery,
yeah.
and you don't get the adaptations you're looking for. All right. We also know that right after with the inflammation and all the other swelling that's going on, well, one of the quickest ways to help decrease that is to do cold plunges. And so this was recommended forever, right? As soon as you're done with your run, whatever it is, you're lifting your weights, take your cold plunge, put your arms, your legs, or whatever, a cold bath, and get rid of that inflammation, and you can have speed up your recovery. What does the clinical data show?
I just saw something like yesterday on social media that some new data came out about that, where it actually decreases muscle growth.
That's right.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. But
Wow.
it's not new data. That has been known for a long time.
Okay.
It's just most social media influencers, like back in the day, let's say, they're just posting like their coach told them to do back when they were in school or whatever, right?
Right.
Instead of keeping up with the data. And this has actually been known for quite a while. That's gonna be problematic. Now, there's still some benefits, but probably not doing it right after you exercise,
Right.
right? And different things. So yeah, as you're blunting, as you're as you're doing the cold plunge or whatever right after you exercise, and you're preventing the blood flow and the in with the good, out with the bad, and all this kind of stuff, you're actually slowing down your recovery.
Wow.
You're,
Yeah.
you
That makes sense because your body's shunting that blood back to the
yeah,
core. It's not even getting to the muscles at that
yeah,
point. Yeah.
exactly. It's not even getting
Huh.
rid of that, right?
Right.
So you have to be really careful when it comes to athletes. What are you taking? What just because there's a mechanism to explain why there should be benefits, doesn't mean it's going to result in clinical outcomes, right? A clinical outcome is a summation of hundreds, if not thousands,
Right. Right.
of mechanisms.
Yeah.
And this is a major problem, I think, with social media or marketers in general, is they'll say, "Hey, look, inflammation is bad. This is anti-inflammatory. Boom, take it." And just hit these mechanisms on and on and on. But the clinical outcome is the opposite of what they're claiming. And that's
Right.
what we need to focus on. What does the clinical data actually say?
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
how we know safety and efficacy, right? Now, if something works and has clinical outcomes, it's going to have a mechanism behind it
Right.
also,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to molecular hydrogen, what does the clinical data say? And I wanted to focus on, first off, it does not impair exercise performance. This has been very clearly demonstrated in so many different models and clinical studies.
What kind of data are you guys pulling to come up with that information?
So animal studies and human studies
The
and
human
performance
studies.
studies.
You guys are doing like a VO2 max?
Yeah, yeah, that was one of the first ones I looked at, as the VO2 max, for
Okay.
example. Um, just some important mechanistic studies, really quick, to really explain how we know this the safety on this. When you take, say, vitamin C and you exercise, you can actually see a decrease in mitochondrial biogenesis, or at
Mm,
least it's not upregulated compared to exercise alone.
okay.
With molecular hydrogen, that's not the case. In fact, molecular hydrogen appears to act as an exercise mimetic, and you may even see increases in mitochondrial biogenesis.
Mm,
Okay, so this is a very powerful finding that we can see if it gets translated into long-term clinical research, because it takes time for mitochondria to go through all these processes and have this. But this is very important to really showing that hydrogen is not impairing exercise adaptations,
right.
whether from inflammation, free radicals, mitochondria, or so on. In fact, a number of these studies that we'll point to, like one clinical study, they looked at fatigue and the ability to continue exercising after bouts. But I'll just explain quickly. They did isometric knee extension exercises. So basically, just at full maximal voluntary contractions, right? So this is basically a machine, and you do as hard as you can. You do a leg extension, okay, and you're gonna do like 50 of these. Every one is gonna be as hard as you can, and
Right.
eventually your force production will go get lower and lower and lower and lower, right? But the group that drank the hydrogen water, they're able to maintain a higher force production over that over those repetitions.
Oh wow.
Okay, now this is when they looked at the some other biomarkers like oxidative stress, inflammation. The levels of oxidative stress in the hydrogen water group, or so the levels of oxidative markers in the hydrogen water group, this is going to be an interesting finding, because we just talked about how free radicals are actually what mediate the benefits of exercise adaptations. Free radicals are produced. The free radicals tell the mitochondria and the cells, hey, make more, do better, be better, get stronger, and so on. So if we neutralize these free radicals, we don't get those benefits. That's why
Mm,
antioxidants, one of the reasons why antioxidants often negate exercise performance benefits,
right.
because they're eliminating the mediator, they're eliminating the messenger, they're reducing the free radicals. So with hydrogen, what do we see? Do we see a decrease or what? We actually see often an increase.
Okay.
We actually see a mild increase in the free radical production initially, only initially in the acute phase, and then it goes back to baseline faster. So it's a faster recovery. It's almost like they got a better workout and had more of a training stimulus, but not so much that that results in cell damage or muscle damage, just more of a exercise stimulus and then a faster recovery. So we
Wow.
can see the same thing with inflammation. Sometimes interleukin 6 levels, very good marker of inflammation, will be a slightly higher in the acute phase and then goes back down quicker compared to the control group. So these are the biomarkers we're seeing. And then what are we seeing phenotypically, or the endpoints of exercise performance? We're seeing things like the increase in the endurance, for example, a decrease in the amount of fatigue. In this in the study also, they exercise at around 70% of VO2 max, and measured I forget what percentage it was, but they measured lactate production, and they found that in the hydrogen water group, there were lower lactate levels.
Hmm.
And this is important because lactate production correlates with uh, fatigue. Okay,
Right.
so because what happens when you're if you have an elite athlete and they're gonna go run, let's say an elite marathon runner, and you're gonna have them run like a 6 miles per hour, they could do that all day long. There's no problem. But you take somebody who's not in very good shape and you have them run at a 6 minute mile pace, they're going to be tired after, maybe even 400 meters. Maybe they won't even do that. And they'll have really high lactate levels. Whereas if you measure lactate in the marathon runner, you don't even measure lactate level. I mean, of course there's some, but it's very low,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because and the reason why is because the marathon runner has such high functioning mitochondria and high cardiac output that they're able to make all of their ATP with their mitochondria. So they don't have to rely on what's called glycolysis to make their ATP. And it's during glycolysis that lactate ends up getting produced.
Okay.
Okay, so when you see, like in this example where the group drinking the hydrogen water had lower lactate levels, it is potentially indicative that they had higher mitochondrial function, and therefore they're able to maintain the same high level of exercise, but use aerobic respiration or mitochondrial oxidative phosphorylation as opposed to glycolysis. So there is a higher level of performance. It could also be indicative that they had faster lactate recycling, right? So these are really good indicators that hydrogen water is improving exercise performance. And this, by the way, was done in elite soccer players, not just untrained athletes.
Right.
There's
Right.
actually a number of, we just published another article too in elite athletes. So
Now, when they're drinking the molecular hydrogen water, are they drinking it throughout the physical activity, or are they just like loading up on it before the physical activity
yeah, loading up on it before. Yeah.
beforehand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because like if they're gonna run, 30 minutes at a lactate threshold or something, they're not gonna be like sipping water throughout. No,
Right.
it's the process of drinking the hydrogen water for 24 to 48 hours before, or preferably, weeks and months before.
Just keep on feeding your body.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
hydrogen water, the molecular hydrogen can alter gene expression. Okay, it has these effects at the genomic level. And so you have better cell signaling, better cellular adaptations, improved mitochondrial function. All of these long term benefits happen over time so that we start to see greater and greater
All
benefits.
right. So now you just created a segue when you started talking about gene expression and all the signaling. Now I want to go ahead and because what you're talking about there, when you don't have good, gene expression, now we're talking about disease formation. Right? So how does this actually play with now people that potentially could be having an autoimmune disease develop or a neurological disease to develop? How does molecular hydrogen take a part in that?
Yeah, so we see again from animal and clinical studies, but again, a lot of this initial data comes from animal studies. But when you take certain animals and let's say they have a genetic mutation that's going to make them very susceptible to cognitive impairments, and they're going to, Alzheimer's. And now you have one group that drinks hydrogen water and the other group that drinks normal water. And then you have your control group, the wild type mice, right? And what you find is that the genetically susceptible mice to cognitive impairments that drank hydrogen water never develop cognitive impairments.
Oh, wow.
They're almost the same as the wild type mice.
Okay.
It's a black and white difference, and we see this in even in Parkinson's disease. There was a study actually at Nagoya University where I was at, and you can basically an injection of 6-hydroxydopamine, which is a neurotoxin. It kills the dopaminergic neurons, and that's going to induce Parkinson's disease. But the drinking of hydrogen water prevented the development of Parkinson's disease.
Wow.
Okay, and this is again, just was an animal study. But
Is it
there's
safe for animals to have the same hydrogen water that I
yeah,
drink?
it's the same thing. Yeah, exactly.
So I could just give it to my dog
Yeah,
if I
people
want?
do it all the time, and there's
Really?
studies like that's been studied in mice, rats, dogs, horses, cows. A whole bunch of
It
different
wouldn't harm my
species.
dog any kind of negative way?
No, the research shows that it's good. It's a good idea.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to get them to drink it before the gasket comes
That's
out.
right. That's the difficulty,
Yeah.
right? Is because when they're and so often like in the animal studies, we'll like with pigs, for example, the other ones, we'll do like an oral gavage or some sort to make sure we're controlling for dosing and concentration, right?
Right, right. Very interesting. So one of the things you mentioned is ATP production from the mitochondria, which obviously we know those are our powerhouse cells inside of our body, and that's what helps produce energy. So you guys have noticed through actual data, clinical data, that it does do that.
Yeah, and there's but and I mean, with clinical studies, you can't actually measure in any correct way the amount of ATP that's being produced in the mitochondria
Right.
because that's the subcellular organelle and trying to measure all that. There are some MRI studies or whatever, but what we can see that those are the effects that are happening. One, we have mechanistic data in in vitro cell culture studies where applying the molecular hydrogen, we see the rejuvenation of mitochondria. We see activations of various complexes. We have increases in ATP production, measured ATP production, right? We have increases in oxidative phosphorylation, increases in oxygen consumption. All of these are indicators of mitochondrial dynamics and improvements to the mitochondria, right? And then we relate this to what we're seeing in the clinical studies, and we're seeing, improvements in, let's say, cognition or improvements in brain connectivity, let's say, or improvements in exercise performance, improvements in mood and anxiety. So all of these also are indicative that yes, it's probably an energy situation that's going on.
And are you what type of data are you getting for the cognitive that are you doing like neural feedback or brain mapping or anything like that?
So it depends on the study, but a number, and it depends on the condition. Like so, for example, there was a study using inhalation of hydrogen gas following post cardiac arrest syndrome or cardiac arrest, and often there are severe neurological consequences that happen after a cardiac arrest because it's kind of like it mimics like a stroke, basically. And in this study, that was actually just published in Lancet, which is one of the top premier medical journals there are. They used hydrogen gas, 2% inhalation of hydrogen gas compared to conventional therapy alone. And when they added the 2% hydrogen gas, there were a couple important findings. Number one, that after 3 months, the group in the hydrogen group, their survivability after 3 months increased by 20%, a relative 40% increased survival compared to the standard alone treatment. And then they looked at the other endpoints like neurological function, and that was also significantly increased and improved compared to the standard alone therapy.
All right.
So, and there was another clinical study on cerebral infarction or stroke. And it was 10 years after that 2007 Nature Medicine publication. And maybe just talk about this because it's very powerful. This study in Nature Medicine that the researchers took and made a stroke model, basically cutting the blood supply to the brain. The middle cerebral artery occlusion is just occluded that artery, and of course, that's going to cause like a stroke. And then they let the blood go back. And when that happens, you get this reperfusion injury. So it's an ischemia, which is when there's no oxygen
Right.
rich blood there, and then a reperfusion injury. And so all that oxygen rich blood goes back to the brain and it causes all this inflammation, neuroinflammation, oxidative stress, and so on. And in this study, they had one group that was normal, one group that so a control group, and then of course another group that had the stroke model, and another group that had the hydrogen, and they used 2% hydrogen gas, and that means all the hydrogen gas was 2%. All the air they inhaled, 2% of that was hydrogen gas,
Okay. And these are
and
people that had a CIA, you're saying, not the TIAs.
Yeah, and to be clear, though, this wasn't an animal study. This is a rat study.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then I'll jump to the other one, the clinical study. But so this study in rats, when they administered the 2% hydrogen gas, there was a dramatic benefit to preventing the brain damage induced by this stroke.
Okay.
And when they could take the rat brain and you can slice it and then you can dye it and you can see what parts where the brain were dead and which ones were okay.
Right.
And you c- you don't have to be an expert. You can literally see with your own eyes the drastic difference between the 2% hydrogen gas and the other group. That
Wow.
hydrogen gas significantly protected the brain from this oxidative damage, from this ischemia reperfusion damage.
Amazing.
And so it was, and 10 years after that, it was a clinical study, and it was on cerebral infarction, and it was a randomized study, and about 50 subjects in total, 25 in each group. But they compared it to edaravone, which is an approved medical drug, and they used inhalation of hydrogen gas.
Mm.
And in this study, the inhalation of hydrogen gas was as effective as, and in some cases more effective than, conventional treatment
Oh, wow.
in improving the stroke ratings, and the number of cognitive assessments they did, like the MRI assessments and things. So these are real clinical studies that have been published looking at these things.
Wow. Wow. Man, I feel like, hydrogen has, been kinda hiding, which
It is the
there's just a
smallest molecule.
yeah, but, it's like there's such tremendous benefits, and, we're talking about brain right now, so it's leading me back to the whole athletes with, like, TBI, the
Mhm.
traumatic brain injury. I would only assume that there's tremendous benefit there as well too.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something that's being investigated as we speak for with another groups that I'm aware of. We actually published a study earlier on the potential effects of hydrogen for TBI, and it's makes a lot of sense for so many reasons. The neuroinflammation, the oxidative stress, hydrogen gas being able to penetrate the blood-brain barrier easier than anything else. I mean, you can drink hydrogen water, you can inhale hydrogen gas, and you can protect the brain. And you can everybody drinks water already, or everybody can just inhale hydrogen gas. And so there's a lot of interest from all sorts of sport athletes and teams that are really looking seriously into using molecular hydrogen as a preventive and therapy, as well as after something has happened, to also be using it. And there's a lot of really good animal studies showing the protective effects of hydrogen gas on TBI as well.
Wow. Are there any people that should avoid molecular hydrogen?
It's possible. There's always a possibility. It's just the contraindications seem to be very low. In terms of clinical studies, there is no known contraindication from a clinical perspective that has been shown. And there's with 200 humans clinical studies have been done, over thousands of subjects. There are no obvious adverse effects. And
Okay.
typically the adverse effects in the placebo group are just as much, if not more, than what's in the hydrogen group. Now, theoretically, there are some potential concerns. For example, if you have an H. pylori infection, Helicobacter pylori, that is a bacteria that feeds on hydrogen gas. And so the
Mm,
concern is, if you are drinking hydrogen water, are you basically giving that bacteria food so now it can grow and survive, right?
mm,
That makes logical sense, but there's no clinical data to support that. And there's also other logic to say that's not going to happen, because typically there's already a lot of hydrogen gas in the stomach at very low concentrations, because this bacteria has a hydrogenase enzyme. So you're talking about a very, like, a nanomolar concentration is all that is needed for it to survive just fine. And by providing more molecular hydrogen, you can now benefit the body systemically, but you're
mhm,
not going to increase the growth of the H. pylori bacteria,
right.
because it already has more than hydrogen gas is necessary, that is possibly needed. And so many data, animal and human studies, have shown that drinking hydrogen water actually improves the microbiome and gut health, improving the colonocytes and improving the immune system. And so in turn, that could then get rid of the pathogenic bacteria and improve the immune system, so that goes away. And anecdotally, there have been people who have reported that they used to have H. pylori, and then after drinking hydrogen water, they don't have it anymore.
Mm,
So there's that mechanism also,
right, right.
right? But again, like I said, mechanisms alone are not where the answers are. We want to see clinical data. So, but I think hydrogen has been shown to be safe, in so many ways because it's already very natural. Like eating
Right.
a healthy diet means you're going to make more hydrogen gas, and so if people want to try it, then they can try it and they can monitor for themselves
Right.
if something's getting worse or better or something.
Another thing is that we get exposed to a lot of EMF, right? Does hydrogen have any kind of connection on benefiting the body from EMF?
Yeah, there's a couple studies that were published on this. It's kind of an interesting area because the EMF idea has not been well accepted or well studied yet, and so the mechanisms for how it's supposed to cause problems and what's really going on are so there's so many concepts, but there's nothing diagnostically like for replication wise that can really dive into it to directly study this,
Right.
and so some of these ideas, though, like how the EMF could activate some of the calcium, voltage gated calcium channels, and that induces peroxide nitrite formation. And this in turn causes, nitrous out of stress and other problems. Hydrogen gas directly can help with that because hydrogen can help regulate dysregulated calcium signaling, as well as helps to reduce peroxide nitrate levels. We can see lower levels of nitrotyrosine, which is a marker of peroxide nitrite levels. And so we see a lot of mechanistic reasons why hydrogen gas would be able to directly help with this.
Right.
And then there was kind of a case report clinical study with somebody who had an EMF type sensitivity, and but by taking molecular hydrogen, it helped to resolve their extreme fatigue that they were having. And we think about the mitochondrial dynamics of how molecular hydrogen can help with that. Mechanistically, again, everything makes sense.
Understood. Tyler, I was a firefighter paramedic for 12 years. Obviously, got my gear here. And I always try to make sure when any of the experts come here to the podcast, how can like first responders, like a firefighter, benefit from molecular hydrogen for the job?
Yeah, great question. So, first off, eh, with molecular hydrogen, it's going to protect your cells. It's kind of priming your cells so that you can handle more stress. And so, whether that's now you have this adrenaline rush and you've just got to push yourself really hard, you need to have more energy, more stamina. You need to do hard things that's hard on your cells. Hydrogen can give you some protection to handle that increased stress on your body and on your cells. Okay. Also, you're bound to get exposed to smoke,
Yeah.
to pollutions, to other things,
Carcinogens,
the
right?
carcinogens, right? And a lot of studies have really shown that hydrogen really helps to protect against these carcinogenic material, like smoke, for example. Even like cigarette smoke, there's a number of studies showing that alone, hydrogen can help protect the lungs and help protect the body in general from these types of toxins and carcinogens. So by taking molecular hydrogen on a daily basis, because you never know what's going to happen later that day,
Right.
or in a week or whatever. So by taking molecular hydrogen, you're sort of priming your cells for protection, so you can have higher level of mitochondrial function, higher resilience to stress. You can and just and also that antioxidant protection, right? Because you are regulating your NRF2 pathway, so you can be ready to handle assaults that happen.
Yeah, and I would also think that there would be, how you were saying with the athletes, less of a possibility of fatigue while you're, going inside of a burning warehouse or a burning building of some sort, right?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
and especially because some of that work is so prolonged. I mean, it's not
Right.
it's probably not gonna, like talking about VO2 max. It doesn't just, you can't take hydrogen water and then just have a much higher VO2 max, right? It's not gonna work that way. But over the long period of time, it could help, but it can also help with just this repeated bouts of exercise. So you go up the stairs or whatever you're doing, and now you got to go again, and then you have
Right.
to go again, and that by the time those last sets, you tend to start going slower. You're getting tired and everything. But with molecular hydrogen, you're able to maintain that level of performance at a high level for a longer period of time.
Right. Right. Now, first responders, like when I worked at the fire department, we were on for 24 hours and then off for 48 hours. There's like serious sleep deprivation. How does hydrogen work for sleep?
Yeah, so there's a couple studies. There was actually a study published using the hydrogen producing tablets. A lot of the studies now are actually using the hydrogen producing tablets, just as a side note, just because they do provide a precise, and or not precise, well, precise, but a high and consistent dose of molecular hydrogen. And so some of these studies that I'm referring to, these tablets were used, and they're placebo controlled also because they also have magnesium, which is good for you. So it's like, well, that confounding variable. How you know it just wasn't some of the magnesium or something, but
Right.
you can easily control for that in the placebo group, right? So study I'm going to talk about now is a non-inferiority study comparing molecular hydrogen to caffeine. And basically, after 24 hours of sleep deprivation, the molecular hydrogen group was able to perform pretty much as well as the caffeine group when it came to cognitive alertness and different cognitive tasks and so on. And
Okay.
then there are also other changes like in brain choline levels and other parts of the brain is looking when you look at it with the fMRI scans. So but one of the cool things, of course, molecular hydrogen doesn't give you that crash because caffeine works as an adenosine antagonist. And so adenosine is that molecule that kind of makes you feel tired and ready to go to sleep. And so caffeine blocks that receptor. And then you still get more and more adenosine buildup, and you can actually get more receptors that are kind of being produced as well. Then once the caffeine wears off, you feel really tired. It's a hard crash. Hydrogen works totally differently because it's working with your mitochondria. It's working on improving neural inflammation and just helping your cells function optimally better anyways.
Right.
There is no crash with molecular hydrogen. We also I was also happy to be part of a study done at UCLA in mice where we put electrodes onto the brains of the mice, and you did different studies of looking at the effects of sleep deprivation and how drinking hydrogen water could protect or modulate sleep. And we found that it did modulate sleep consolidation in different aspects. So there seems to, yes, be benefits for sleep. So if you do have to have the sleep deprivation, or you need to just have higher cognitive capacity when you are really tired, or when it's time for you to go to sleep, you're able to have better sleep consolidation in
Better
general.
like deep sleep, better REM cycle, all of that
Right.
stuff.
Yeah, the further you are from homeostasis, the more the molecular hydrogen seems to help bring you back to homeostasis and get more bang for your buck, so to speak.
Okay. All right, that's good to know. Because a lot of people are, walking around, even like myself, the aura ring, and trying to look and see how we can improve our readiness score every single day, and our
Yeah.
sleep score and everything else. So just was curious about that on the
Yeah,
sleep
people,
side.
and a lot of people have said this that when they go through the like travel, for example, like jet lag or just times where there's major sleep deprivation or really poor sleep problems or like alcohol use, let's say, and you can compare those times with and without molecular hydrogen, and they'll say that molecular hydrogen really seems to help a lot. But hydrogen, it's not a cure all or something, so it's not going to, you can't just do anything and then take hydrogen and be better. And and also, if you're already doing pretty good, so if your sleep score, whatever, is in the 80s or 90s, or let's say, you're not all of a sudden going to be, at 99.
Right, right,
It's more mild. So it just seems like the further you are up to a certain point, I mean, it can't resurrect you. But
right.
but in a lot of ways, the further you are from homeostasis, the greater the potential benefits.
What are some of the myths out there about hydrogen water?
We talked about some of them. That's the same as alkaline water.
Right.
Another one is that it somehow alters the water structure, or that you can even alter water structure at all. But if you did alter water structure, then it's no longer water, and so that's like another myth. The misunderstanding of what hydrogen water is, because they think, well, water already has hydrogen because it's H2O, so it's just not like a scam. They need to realize we're talking about just water that contains solubilized or dissolved hydrogen gas inside of it. The idea that the same as hydrogen peroxide, or you can just take hydrogen peroxide and get the same thing as molecular hydrogen, but they're two totally separate and different chemical species in every way you can imagine. Almost the
Right.
opposite, right? Oxidant, antioxidant, right? Oxygen, hydrogen. They're totally different.
Yeah.
Um, Also, that there's a major conspiracy of some sort, that there's all this clinical research that proves that hydrogen is effective, but yet the FDA just won't approve it or something. Me being involved in the research and having being in the position that I am in, I can say that's not true. It's just that to like approve a drug as a pharmaceutical by the FDA, it literally costs $1 billion to do that.
Wow.
And so if we want to have hydrogen approved, then somebody needs to pony up the money of $1 billion to do the study to see if it really has the level of clinical effectiveness that we see in these preliminary studies,
Right.
right? So no one's going to do that because it's a huge investment, and for what? You can't patent molecular hydrogen.
Right.
Most of the research that's been done on hydrogen is government funded,
Wow.
by government grants, but they're small, right? 250,000, $500,000. That's not going to get you very far when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars and a total of billion of dollars to really get something to the level of evidence that is needed to get government approval, like the FDA approval.
Right.
But there is interest in all these areas. That's why the government has literally given money, and the government does give hundreds of millions of dollars to study, these other like alternative therapies, acupuncture, even and other things, because that's what the people want.
Right.
So my hope is that people will learn about molecular hydrogen, put it on their radar, and express interest in this. And if there's an interest, if there's enough interest in molecular hydrogen research, then and only then will there be enough funds from the government, because who else is going to fund this, in order to do these major clinical studies. And once and only once we have the level of clinical evidence that really shows that, yes, if you take molecular hydrogen, if you have like cardiac arrest, or if you have COVID, or you have this disease, or if you have cancer, if you have whatever it is, and if you were to take molecular hydrogen, it's going to help you by you recover this much faster, or prevent you from having, these side effects of chemotherapy or radiotherapy, or all these things that we see in the clinical studies, these early clinical studies of, you know, a couple hundred people at the largest so far. If we can see that same thing with a couple thousand people, then we get the FDA is going to give approval for that specific condition.
Right.
And I think eventually that will happen, because that translation from animal research to human research is quite impressive. There's a lot of things out there, molecules, nutraceuticals, drugs, supplements, and so on, that can do amazing things in vitro and cell culture work, but it doesn't work at all on animals. And then sometimes it does work on animals. But the things that do work on animals often don't ever work in humans.
Right.
But here we're talking about something that shows great promise in vitro, great promise in animal studies, and still showing some pretty decent promise in human clinical studies.
Wow.
So this is why I think we really need to, and I appreciate you helping get this message out there. We need to have more education and awareness about this. And this is probably answering one of your questions. How come more people don't know about this? It's because the science started first. The
Right.
science on molecular hydrogen and all this research started. And then the industry is like, oh, look, there's science here. Let's see if we can develop this. As opposed to what it sometimes appears with other types of products out there. Someone has an idea, they throw a product and they start marketing it and making claims and all this stuff. And then eventually the science starts being done on that, funded by the industry, funded by the company, right?
Right.
And then people learn about it because it's industry sponsored, industry funded. People are going on podcasts and going to conferences selling their product. Well,
Right.
who was doing that with molecular hydrogen?
Right.
I've been doing that on molecular hydrogen since 2013, and I have not been selling a product. I've just been talking and educating about molecular hydrogen.
Yeah.
And so it is interesting because soon, this year, I am going to start promoting a hydrogen inhalation device that I worked on for research. It's the only way that people can deliver a therapeutic and safe dose of molecular hydrogen.
Nice.
So now I'm really excited because there is an opportunity where I can be behind a product that I helped to develop and filed a patent on and all of this, to deliver molecular hydrogen in a way that we do it in the clinical studies, where every inhalation is therapeutic, there's no risk for flammability, and it delivers a precise targeted dose of molecular hydrogen.
Wow.
And we did this specifically for research, but it's going to be commercialized for people who, like yourself, or anybody who actually wants to use this on their own. If they want to, they can do that.
And this is already developed? You already have it?
Yeah, yeah. It's going to probably launch in the fall.
Oh, nice.
And so it's coming out
Amazing.
really soon. Yeah, and but we're already having a lot of researchers who are finally they can use this, because see, in Japan and other countries, and like when I did my PhD research, we we had to get a tank of gas made special with the exact percentage of hydrogen gas we want, like say 2.3% hydrogen gas or
Okay.
3% hydrogen gas, and then all the air that was inhaled would come from this tank. And
Okay.
and and because you couldn't use anything higher than 4.6% hydrogen gas, because that's explosive. You
Right.
can't blow up the laboratory,
Right.
or you can't blow up your patient. And we laugh because of how ridiculous that is, but that is actually happening.
Oh, really?
There are
Wow.
clinics where people have been inhaling hydrogen gas and hydrogen oxygen gas, oxyhydrogen, and there's an ignition source, and they have a nasal cannula in, and something happens, and it fractures their face.
No, but that's scary. That if you wanna if you want to put an end to molecular hydrogen,
Yeah,
that's the way to put the end to it because, that people have to be careful with that.
100%.
Yeah.
Hydrogen is very flammable.
Wow.
And so here we have a potentially amazing therapeutic, and it could be totally destroyed because a misuse, because we're like, "Ah, it's not that bad. Oh, it's safe, I use it. I don't have a problem or something."
Isn't hydrogen with the Hindenburg?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
right.
is.
Yeah.
100%.
Static
Exactly.
electricity, boom.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we have to be really careful with this. And
Yeah.
so in the hospitals and clinics, you can't even get IRB approval to do these clinical studies unless you're able to use only a concentration below the flammability level.
Right.
Fortunately, you don't have to be very high for it to be therapeutic. Only a 1 to 4% concentration is very therapeutic. In fact, sometimes 2% is more effective than 4%.
Wow.
But the problem is when people use like nasal cannulas, when they take a breath like that, all the outside air dilutes the concentration down. So now they are likely not even getting a therapeutic dose of hydrogen, but because it's pure hydrogen or an oxyhydrogen mixture, it's flammable.
Mm.
And so you're getting like potentially a flammable mixture with no benefit. That's like the worst
Yeah, that doesn't make
thing
sense.
that you would want. And so finally, with this unit, people can do research with it in the laboratory, animal research, clinical research, cell culture research. You can give a precise, targeted dose of hydrogen exactly where you want it to be, and there's no risk for flammability. And
Okay.
so this will be really helpful, I think, to advance molecular hydrogen
And that's
research moving
using
forward.
the non-rebreather mask?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
With the reservoir bag.
Yeah, it has a inflatable bag so that every inhalation you take comes directly from that bag inside.
Nice.
So that even if you go a really big breath or whatever, it just comes from that bag and it's not going to get diluted. So you know exactly how much hydrogen gas you're getting. And when you exhale out, it just goes out the one way valve of the
Wow.
mask.
Do you ever see, like, in, conventional medicine, like in the ER, them utilizing, like, a bag valve mask, a BVM, while resuscitating someone in cardiac arrest, but with hydrogen instead? Do you ever see that ever happening in the future?
In the future, yeah, I think it might. It's possible that it might. That there's like I said, that one study on cardiac arrest that was published in the Lancet. It really is an impressive study,
Wow.
finding, and it's so easy to administer. And the sooner you administer it, the better. And it'd probably be better if people were inhaling hydrogen gas before they had the cardiac arrest.
Right, right. Very interesting. So, alright, now let's get down to, what's your delivery method of choice for you when it comes to, molecular hydrogen?
So right now, I'd probably say the hydrogen water. I often
Okay.
just like to use the hydrogen tablets. There's a lot of them on the market. They're all pretty much the same concept. But the thing I like about the tablets is it provides a high concentration, high dose of molecular hydrogen. I think the hydrogen water bottles and things that are out there, the hydrogen flask, for example, some of these are great products, but you don't know all the longevity of them, and then there can just be issues. Of course, if the company is reputable, you've done your research, then you can do that. Um,
Now there are some, like, you go on Amazon, you buy, like, a hydrogen water bottle for, like, 10 bucks or 20
yeah, yeah,
bucks.
yeah.
That's like a big,
Probably not. Yeah, probably when it's super cheap like that. And I'm not saying the cheapest is always is bad, right? That there it's but there is some truth to that. And so I mean you have to make sure it's the right membrane, that the concentration is as high enough for it to even be therapeutic, right? How long it's going to last for. There's a number of things about that. So I would be cautious about just running on to Amazon and grabbing the cheapest thing or the one that has, well, this has good reviews, so therefore that doesn't really mean anything. There's a great reviews on products that are totally placebo,
right.
right? I mean, they can maybe guide you, but it's not the end all be all. I would recommend that if somebody wants to try hydrogen water products, that they should ensure that it has the H2 analytic or certified to IHSA criteria, the International Hydrogen Standards Association,
Okay.
because that way it's actually been tested, and it provides at least the similar doses that are used in human clinical studies.
Awesome.
And so that's one way to kind of guide you on that. And there is an article on our Molecular Hygiene Institute that has like 7 considerations or something for people when they want to look at a hydrogen product, like what things to type of things to consider. But like I said, our nonprofit, we don't endorse or represent or whatever, no affiliation with any hydrogen company. Our focus is advancing the research, education, awareness of hydrogen as a medical gas.
The research, yeah,
So when it comes
absolutely.
to hydrogen water, yeah, those are great. You can do that. And then there's just you just ask for me personally. That's what I like to do, and I don't pay for the hydrogen tablets either because we did a lot of clinical research, so I have a lot of those
I like yeah,
left over, right?
yeah,
It would be difficult if you had a large family, let's say, and you're trying to give a hydrogen tablet to everybody. Maybe that could be expensive if you don't have the means for that. But I also like the tablets because they provide bioavailable magnesium, and most of us are deficient in magnesium.
yeah, magnesium's important.
Yeah,
That's one I've heard a lot of, functional medicine doctors says that if there's one supplement that you should take is magnesium.
yeah, and most people are deficient, and correcting deficiency is always gonna do much more than any, I don't know, red light therapy additional thing you could possibly do,
Right,
right?
right.
So, yeah, so I like that, and then, of course, when it comes to inhalation, yeah, I would say that the product that will be coming out, soon, inhaleh2.com is the website.
Okay.
Yeah, inhaleh2.com, and this is the only it's not the only product that'll be therapeutic, of course. There are other products on the market. We've used some of those in clinical studies, but in general, the big studies, we use like a tank of hydrogen gas to ensure a precise therapeutic, safe concentration of molecular hydrogen. And this machine will allow everybody to do that.
Wow. So my other question with the different bottles that are out there, the
Mhm.
hydrogen bottles, when people are drinking it, are you just sipping it little by little over 2 hours, or should you actually take when it converts that water, or should I say infuses the gas into the water? Should you just like drink the whole flask
Yeah, in my opinion, I'd probably bet it's probably best to drink the entire flask.
right away?
Yeah, because a couple of reasons. One, once you make the hydrogen water, and as soon as you open the lid, now the hydrogen gas is starting to go out. Just like when you have a carbonated beverage, you open the lid, the gas is starting to leave,
Right.
right? So you want to drink that while the gas is still in there. And if you're not moving it around, I mean, you have like an hour, right? You have plenty of time to do it. Um, but the sooner you drink it, the better. Still, right? You want to get all that molecular hydrogen inside of your body,
Yes. So
and
you get a greater benefit having it all in your stomach.
that's the other part, yeah. Because hydrogen gas, like I said, you see hydrogen gas starting to escape the lungs within 2 minutes,
Okay.
and it goes back to baseline within a half an hour to an hour. So if you were to sip on that, then it means that the rate of hydrogen gas entering the body is equal to the rate of hydrogen gas leaving the body.
Mm,
Therefore, the concentration of hydrogen gas at the cellular level never increases. Because it reaches equilibrium, right?
right.
One comes in, one goes out. There's no increase. You need, you know, a million to come in and only one goes out, like at that rate,
Right.
basically. Now you have an increase in cellular concentration, and then you start having a therapeutic effect because you surpassed the therapeutic threshold. So it's probably better to drink it all at once instead of sipping it throughout the day.
Is there any, like colon cancer is really huge. Is there any benefit? You start looking at a lot of the holistic people. They're doing coffee enemas, they're doing wheatgrass enemas. Is anyone doing molecular hydrogen water enemas?
I know people are doing that, and I don't know about the clinical effects or outcome of that. I know that we have done, and others have done, studies with hydrogen water on colon cancer. Others did that, and some pretty impressive results. We followed it up. We used hydrogen water tablets, and it was an animal study. But we also compared it to 5-FU, which is a chemotherapy drug, and found that hydrogen water was in a lot of ways just as effective, and in some cases more effective than the drug was, and the combination was the most effective, but that hydrogen actually prevented a lot of the negative or toxic side effects from the drug.
Oh wow. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Tyler, um, you know, as we start wrapping up here, man, there's one thing that's happening right now. There's a huge movement called Make America Healthy Again. And a lot of the stuff that we talked about today, it's about making people well, right? How do you see everything that you're doing taking part in this whole movement? And I ask you because I've seen you at the events, right? So how do you see molecular hydrogen making America healthy again?
I think molecular hydrogen holds a very special place in this entire area. Like you talked about how you felt like hydrogen is being kept a secret, and like how come no one's talking about this? And hydrogen, it's this amazing humble molecule in the sense that it literally is the ancestor of all the elements. I mean, and it's what powers the sun and fusion to create helium. It powers the sun, the stars. It was the first created in the Big Bang. It was, hydrogen was always there, even when we talk about from the scientific idea of the genesis of life. From the deep sea hydrothermal vents, hydrogen was an energy source that allowed the first microorganisms to be created, because hydrogen gas was that energy source, that fuel,
Right.
that fuel. The evolution of life, or the idea of prokaryotes or bacteria into eukaryotes, plant and animal cells, hydrogen gas is always involved with that. And then we developed this symbiotic relationship with healthy bacteria, microbiome in our body that produces hydrogen gas. So it's always been there. And just now we're starting to really recognize that hydrogen is like the front and center of everything. And it's just this mild molecule that works to restore homeostasis of the cells.
Right.
And we see from the clinical studies and that hydrogen has the potential to radically revolutionize medical health care, where there's no contraindications with other types of therapies, as far as we know. It's something that's naturally there, that's safe, that is even been shown to be rich in the untouched waters. Hydrogen gas is there in these healing waters. Molecular hydrogen is there in all these mystical and legends. Molecular hydrogen always seems to be there, and here again, just science is catching up and realizing that hydrogen plays an important role in our life. The more hydrogen gas we naturally produce by having a healthy diet, the healthier we live. I think hydrogen as a philosophical molecule as well, in the sense that not only does it have these medical applications, but hydrogen has this way of bringing peace. And I have said before that many wars have been fought over water, but I think that peace, world peace, will be found over hydrogen.
Wow. Wow. Amazing, man. So, RFK Jr., what are your thoughts about him?
Well, I'm excited that somebody is willing to make changes, to radically talk about things and have these conversations. And he has my support to make these conversations. I want that to happen, and I want to participate. I want to be part of these conversations, and I want to use my expertise, my skills, and my knowledge to help advance things as much as I can. I do have concerns about how this is polarized thing so much, where it becomes the Republican type movement, and Democrat Republic, instead of a movement of health where we're all united.
Yeah. It really should be nonpartisan,
It
right?
should be nonpartisan. Some of the best scientists there are who don't like what RFK is doing is concerning. They should be part of this conversation,
Right.
because otherwise we're just going to get too many social media influencers talking about health instead of the people who are dedicated all their life to researching this one little thing, and they actually do have the answer.
Right.
And I just want there to be more conversations so that we can solve this issue, because in reality, we all are on the same team.
I agree. I agree 100%. So, Dr. LeBaron, if there's one person out there that truly, truly resonates with your message today, what is that one thing you can leave them off with?
Because we're talking about molecular hydrogen, I would say that molecular hydrogen represents a molecule that can radically, potentially radically revolutionize healthcare, our wellness, bring us back to homeostasis. And we need more awareness. We need more education, because we need more research to demonstrate this. It represents the molecule of peace. And working together is a way that we can accomplish the medical benefits of molecular hydrogen and world peace.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And if people want to find you, where do they find you?
Yeah, so for all things molecular hydrogen, molecularhydrogeninstitute.org. Again, this is a science based nonprofit focused on the research, education, and awareness of hydrogen as a medical gas. And on social media, just Molecular Hydrogen Institute, on Instagram, H2MHI. And then, of course, you can also follow me. I post a lot of my research as well as some training videos, exercise things, and other things I'm interested in, just at Tyler W. LeBaron. And yeah, people are welcome to follow me, connect, and just help us spread this message.
Amazing. Amazing. Doc, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast. This was very informative. And I think this is what people need. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. My pleasure.
Guys, you guys heard it. This is not just a talker. This is not just someone who's on social media trying to get the views and the likes. This is a scientist. This is somebody who dedicates their life to the research behind molecular hydrogen. This is not snake oil. There's science behind this. And as you can see, it doesn't matter if you're an executive, it doesn't matter if you're an athlete, and it doesn't matter if you're an actual sick person, right? There's benefits to this for everyone. You should implement it into your life. Learn more about it. Make sure you look at all the links down below. Follow his page. Make sure you subscribe. Share this with all your friends and family, and we'll see you for the next one.